Hey everybody, it's Binge the Body Whisperer here. How's it going? Just going to be walking across the bridge for work, and just wanted to touch base, see how things were going. So this is the DailyWEE, and this is my walk across the bridge to work. You can see the cable car right there. One day I was checking my phone, and those poles that I just walked past, I almost ran into one. Luckily, that's something, body awareness. It's kind of a funny thing, but I was just chatting with somebody, to a friend of mine. Like, we don't have, and this is something that with the binge stuff and things that I try and kind of incorporate with my work, is body awareness, is moving through space in a different way than maybe we're used to now, and asking the question, what is it to be and what is it to move like a human? What does that entail? Was chatting with somebody, or watched a video the other day about walking and what it is that we have. Nowadays we have these kicks, all kinds of shoes that protect our feet in a way that they think we've changed the way we walk. We would have walked with more of a, if you're walking barefoot, there's a different feel to how you would walk on different surfaces. And especially if you were walking on rough surfaces, you would have more of a, you wouldn't just jam your heel, because we're heel walkers now. We walk with our kind of like heel to heel, rather than, we would have probably been more, it would have been more of on the ball and the toe of the foot, because that's where we actually have more padding and we have more dexterity in those. So if we would have been in the jungle or walking, you would have put your foot down, almost like felt with the foot, to see if there's anything, kind of give it a sensation, okay, that's good, that's a good spot to walk. And that would have changed the way that our mobility would have been, and that would have changed the way we moved throughout our body. Even when we had moccasin or some type of a protective layer that wasn't as thick as like our rubber sole shoes, we would have still led with that kind of that front of the foot. And actually that would have changed the way that we would have moved martially, even like when I was learning some of the martial techniques of like small sword, broadsword, different things like that. There was a difference in a different time, a different kind of technique with each different sword. With the small sword, there was almost, and I had mentioned this to one of my teachers because it was one of the tougher ones for me to pick up. And I think part of the reasons was it felt like dancing to me. And dancing is kind of done on the balls of the feet a lot of times. You don't dance on your heels, unless maybe that's a specific, but most things are done. Dancing is very ball of the foot. And I'll say that's not been, except for running, that's not something that almost throws me into a different body language. And then I think it throws off my proprioception. And so but like other forms had this kind of more like grounded sport-like feel to them, like broadsword, two-handed broadsword, even rapier and dagger, small sword and dagger. There was this more of a ground, like not a basketball stance, but yeah, more of a sport type stance that made more sense to me. So it's just interesting. It's interesting how we find grounding, what we use in our bodies, how we use our bodies. It's another thing why when I do the binge stuff, the primal movements, I like to get on to all fours. We don't spend a whole lot of time, like wrestlers do, people who might be in like what do you call it, like the martial arts, they get down more on all fours. Who else would be on all, like in football, that was one thing, American football, you started in that position of being in the all fours, but then it was quickly up. But then we did do, tackling is kind of a on the ground kind of thing, so because there is an element of leaving, you could be on all fours trying to tackle somebody because you're wrapping up. So, and then we used to do like drills and stuff where it was a lot of bear crawling, like Down and Dirty was this one we did where it was like you were on the ground and you kept kind of weaving with two other people. It was this kind of a fun game to get used to being in contact with the ground for tackling. So yeah, it's just it's a bit of a meander of thoughts. But these are some of the things that I think of when I look at what I'm doing as far as sport and what I'm doing as far as like engaging muscle groups and body groups. It's one of the reasons too why I do the gripper, because getting that grip strength, I was chatting with a friend about that who's what do you call it? He's a acupuncturist, and he talked about how with a healthy grip strength there is a correlation to your lymphatic system. Like it's a beneficial thing to the lymphatic system, which kind of makes sense to me in the aspect that we would have been since we would have spent time like crawling and especially this kind of the gripping. Babies have a grip strength. That's something that's natural in them. If something gets in their hand, they latch onto it because there was a evolutionary advantage for that to hold on, and you see that in primates. I'm not exactly sure if there is a correlation between humans and primates. My guess would be there is, that something's still in there. We talk about our different brains, that we have 3 brains. We have kind of the reptilian brain, we have the limbic brain, which is more, maybe they call the monkey mind, and then we have the neocortex, which is our most recent brain, and that's for logic and reasoning. But we have these other brains, and maybe art as well, but we have these other brains that are still alive and kicking, and I would guess take up, even though they're the sub-brains, or if you want to call them sub-brains, they're maybe the lesser brains, they probably, what keeps this biological system alive, they probably subconsciously control way more of what we're doing than we know, what we think, and get in there to help us survive, and probably create habits and patterns that we continue to do and probably are hard to break. But I am a firm believer that they can be broken. A lot of those patterns, they can be, when you get a trigger, you can actually find a new routine to go through, rather than falling into the same patterns of the old. Once that trigger is kind of once it's triggered. But I think the big thing is identification. And once you identify that thing, and that's the hard part because it's subconscious, it takes time, maybe an outside observer, finding squishy space. I like to call it squishy space, finding perspective, kind of looking outside of yourself and saying, well, why am I doing these things? What could be a trigger? And then being honest with yourself. So, but that's probably a topic for another time. I hope you guys are well. It's been a good chat. I'm here at the gates. So keep moving, people.